This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
All right. You've got a Schlage key lock. Yeah, that is a F51 Plymouth 605 is what that is. I swapped them out to change which key was the active key. Okay. So these locks are new or they're existing?
They're kind of old. I mean, they're whatever, 10, 15 years old.
Okay.
There's 2 pairs of Schlage locks, and we lost positive key control of the current set, so I have the set from a couple years back sitting down in the basement, so I installed them in the same holes. So.
All right. So what's the difference between the first lock and then the replacement lock?
Well, nothing that I can see.
Oh.
And the old locks, the ones that are not installed right now, work just fine. When you toggled the switch from horizontal to vertical, great. When you left it horizontal, locked, but opened the door from the inside, it would unlock the bottom lock, which is good.
Well,
on this one that's currently active, yeah, well, so I know they're both Schlages, I know that, but maybe they're different.
Well, that's like saying you've got 2 cars and they're both Chevys. So what you actually have in these photos, and it would be really interesting to see the lock that's not installed, is you have a tubular lock in these pictures that you sent me.
Okay.
Now, a tubular lock, when you turn that button to lock it or to leave it unlocked, it stays that way. Unless you turn the key on the outside or you manipulate it on the inside by turning it clockwise or counterclockwise. It will always stay in that condition until you perform that knowing act of either locking it or unlocking it.
Mm-hmm.
You probably had a cylindrical lock prior to this, and likely the A series, possibly the D series. If your house is like from the 50s or 60s, you could have had a D lock. The 53 function, which is why I sent you that Schlage PDF, that will have the ability of staying locked until you intentionally set it into a passage. And it's interesting because the home I grew up in had an A-lock. So I knew that if I pulled my door closed, I just locked myself out. So you know not to do that. Or a lot of people live in a house with this F51 Plymouth, and they know that if they've pulled the door closed, they left their door unlocked. So that they know to do it. So my suggestion is that you put the old lock back on, and if you've lost the key, either ship it to us and I'll get it open and make a key, or take it to your locksmith and get that key situation fixed, because then you don't have to relearn behavior.
Well, fair enough. And we, I know me, and I know having it locked behind me is a bad idea.
I know me too. I got a key in the backyard and I got a key under the vehicle. So I know me too. Always under the vehicle. Always.
Yeah, if you know yourself, it's a good thing.
Tell me about your old lock. Was it a push turn button?
Yeah, it looks, from the outside, it looks identical to what's installed now.
Yeah.
And it allows me to behave as me rather than to lock myself out. Hey, what do you think about electronic locks?
Well, before we go on to that, the telltale sign on the difference is that on the inside of your lock, on the one that you have now, you can see the 2 screw heads. The screws are exposed. On your old lock, you can't see the screw heads. That's the telltale sign between an A-line or a D-line cylindrical and the tubular that you currently have installed. So I would definitely go back and either buy a new A-line or just get that bad boy brought up to speed. That A series, that's an A53 Plymouth 605 so that would be a great option. Electronic locks, I use them every day, and I also shun the use of them every day. I'm a CPL, a certified professional locksmith through ALOA. I don't do locksmithing physically on a daily basis. I've demonstrated proficiency on the exam, and I do just like good old-fashioned mechanical locks. And, the only problem with those is if you want to do an Airbnb, it's really nice to be able to connect to that lock through your app. So that's a really big advantage. The problem with most electronic locks is they're always going to be residential caliber unless you spend $1,000 on an electronic lock or more. So it's always going to be $150, $250 for that stuff, which means you're going to be using the type of caliber of that lock you have installed. That latch is, that's, Schlage's good. Everyone's good. Schlage is above average for residential quality, but you're always going to be using that kind of lock. And that lock you pulled off, it's decades old for sure. And this lock, if it's adult used, it'll last for forever, but it won't last like that old lock. And if you're considering them and you have an actual use for them, that's awesome. The only, like a month ago, I had to change the code for the reason that you'd have to change the code. And I didn't know the master code, so I literally had to take the lock off the door. No biggie, but it was still 8 minutes that I could have used otherwise.
Yeah. So this one's got a nice, I guess 1-inch throw. That's a nice standard, right?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Okay, this one, I was just looking at the door that's in there now, in the electronic ones. I think they've got the same 1-inch throw into the frame.
Oh, yeah. The deadbolt will be the same. Yeah, absolutely. If you get a FE595, FE595 by Schlage, we've got a customer that builds temporary walls for hospitals, so they order them by the caseload from us. And have at it. There's no reason not to. Like on the garage door going into the house, it'd be pretty typical for the overhead door, the garage door, to be open. Well, I've got a simplex mechanical combination lock on that door, and you've seen these, whether it be in a bank or if you were ever from Chicago, you would know the name Marshall Fields. Well, Marshall Fields always used those locks. So it was 2, 4, and 3. Hit 2 and 4 and then 3. So we could all get in the house with the overhead door open, but the door was always locked. And, once every 20 years, someone...
That's exactly where I was planning on putting it, on the inner garage door.
Yeah. The only technicality of that, make sure the one you buy is UL listed, because that door is probably fire rated, at least to 20 minute. I'm not the fire code police, but as a certified fire door and egress assembly inspector, I would catch that. If it wasn't UL listed, I would find that on an audit. That would never, but just to be perfectly technical about it, you would want to order one that has a UL stamp on the faceplate. And if it's not fire rated, then it doesn't matter. But I really love the idea of having the best of both worlds. I can get in with no special tool, like a key, and I can keep the people out, because it does happen. We were at home maybe 10 years ago. Someone broke into our garage, got into our cars, stole my fancy sunglasses, didn't dare come in the house because it was locked, because I did have that lock on it. But in the home I live in now, we rarely lock that garage door. So if you've got my overhead open, you're coming right into my house. So score 1 for the electronic lock, or at least a latching electronic lock, because you're going to have to throw that every night.
Mm-hmm.
Or throw it every time. But if you replaced the knob lock you have, then you're in good shape. Or the problem that you have is you've got holes in the door. And the reason I say that is because you can, like Yale's Next Touch, it's going to have a lever, it's going to have mechanical, it's going to have electronic, it's an electronic lock. But the problem is you've got holes in the door already. So ideally you want something self-latching.
Yeah.
And, you got a hole, that's going to be troublesome. Where it's located, if you were to replace the Plymouth that you have with, I think it's the FE595, you're going to be really close to that deadbolt in terms of where it's located. So that's what I would do. I don't know the overall height of the FE595 by Schlage. It might fit. All right, so on the outside, the overall height is 6 3/4. So if we're lucky and we're at like 3 5/8, no, more than that, 3 7/8 from the center to the top, 6.75 times 0.5. Yeah, 3 3/8. So, but I think your centers on your lock and deadbolt are probably going to be 4.5 inch. So you'd have to see if that would fit. Looking at your stuff, you might have room to stuff that FE595 in there. So you'll have that all the time, always latching. And then you've got the deadbolt for extra security. So that could work.
There we go. There we go. All right. Excellent. Well, I really appreciate the time. I do. It's been very informative.
Yeah, no, it's always a learning experience, regardless of the side of the phone that I'm on. Yeah, cool. A couple of choices. Go back to what you had or move to an electronic lock. It's the platform of what you had if it was an A-line. If those screws are concealed on the inside, that rose snaps over it. You have a higher caliber lock. That's what would be considered heavy-duty residential. But unless you're going to try to put that lock onto the door of a school, you're not going to break it. So anyway, awesome.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much. I appreciate. I'm surprised to get an email back from you, and I'm pleasantly surprised to have a very informative chat. So thank you very much.
The pleasure was mine. Thank you, sir.
All right. You have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.